Namaste. Welcome to the late night show today. And we've got a very, very interesting person, very famous author from the United States, Asra Nomani, who has been fighting the extremists in her own way. And of course, we also have Shri Vibhuti Jha. So, welcome, Asraji, and welcome, Vibhuti ji.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And
I'm so happy to be with you.
Thank you.
I would like you to please just tell a little about your fights with the extremists in the past that led you to finally challenge the wokes.
Yeah. So, behind me is the story of my life and also my work. It's my library, and I've organized it chronologically. So, up in the top, we have my first pursuit of knowledge in India, my birth country, where I was born in the summer of 1965. And you will see the books on Tantra and Hinduism and Buddhism. And then you see the evolution of Judaism, Christianity, and then the faith into which I was born, Islam. Was probably born a reformer. My mother and father were young people of post-colonial India. They had grown up under British rule, but they were young adults in the new free India, and they enjoyed, the democracy that was India's reality. My father, he saw these pink flamingos in a slideshow from a professor at his college at Osmania University in Hyderabad. And he said, I want to see those pink flamingos one day. So he ended up coming to the United States and becoming a PhD student here. My mother followed, and then my brother and I came afterwards from Hyderabad. Our family is originally from UP, from Azamgarh district. Yeah. And what happened for us is that, we lived as Muslims in America, but lived in this reality where we assimilated. And the 9/11 tragedy is what really made me challenge extremism within my faith of Islam. And it was this tragedy of my colleague from the Wall Street Journal, Daniel Pearl, in Karachi, Pakistan, that
Yes,
changed
yes.
the trajectory of my life. And I know the importance of Danny's murder in also India's history.
Yes, 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 absolutely. Absolutely. And so that led you to the woke army. That is the latest flavor in the United States, or has been for some time now.
Well, what happened is I encountered the extremists within my Muslim community, and they were trying to stop a lot of the reforms that my parents were supporting me in pursuing in the United States. And so these are reforms that women in India have also been attempting. Simple ones like the right of a woman to go into a mosque, the right of a woman to be free of talaq, talaq, talaq as divorce. And what happened is I immediately experienced this phenomena that I know a lot of people will recognize, that I was called a racist. I was called this word that people now know, Islamophobe. So here I am, a Muslim, and I'm being described as an Islamophobe. Well, what I quickly learned was that the Muslim extremists within my community had used this philosophy called critical race theory to make Muslims a race so that they could then call anybody challenging extremism a racist. And what I then discovered was that in the 2 decades after the 9/11 attacks, the Islamists, or those Muslims that are interested in political Islam, like the Tablighi Jamaat and Muslim Brotherhood, and so many of these alphabet soup of organizations, the Deobandis in northern India, these people in America built an alliance with the far left, and then they crept into the Democratic Party. And that is then the emergence of this thing that I've written about, this network called the woke army, the far left and the Islamists working together to hijack freedoms, not only in the United States, but you all know this so well, and you've spoken so deeply about this on your show, but it is now in India, of course. And they have made an enemy out of India. And that's what I want to try to wake people in America also to this fact, because India, of course, is an important ally of the United States. It's my birth nation, it's my mother country. I believe in India, and this demonization and character assassination that I got as a Muslim has now also been turned on anybody who dares to challenge the vision of Islam in politics, political Islam. And that, unfortunately, is what has caused India to come now in the crosshairs of this woke army.
Okay, Vibhuti Ji, you want to go in?
Yeah, I mean, this is you showed the book, and I want to tell all the viewers I bought the book. So go ahead and buy the book, although this is not a book promotion tour. But the idea here is that you must read, because this is I read substantial portions of the book, Asra, and it is fascinating that the narrative that you have built, the instances that you have quoted, you refer to Danny Pearl. The reference in you mentioned there that how people accused you of a relationship with Danny Pearl.
Yeah.
How disgusting and personal attack that they can make on you.
Yeah.
So here is something which I read in your book: the cancer of cancel culture spreading throughout America, the West, and even my motherland of India, with people singled out for firing, ridicule, or shaming for statements that to the same majority represents the parameters of necessary debate, can be directly laid at the feet of the silencers. This is a very important statement that you have said here. And that's what we always talk about on this show, that we need to be awakened.
Right.
If you want to contest your enemy, you need to be awakened. So share with us a couple of things that I picked up from your book. Is what is an honor brigade? The one thing which bothered me was that the amount of time these people have spent in preparation to annihilate things that we believe in, and how they have gone about creating the anonymous warriors,
Right.
and the honor brigade, the Leon Watch, Soros. The floor is yours from my side.
Yeah, thank you so much for focusing on that. So this is what happened to me, is that I grew up in America just like a normal kid. I did struggle with some of the dynamics of shame that are part of our society. And so, what is one example? For example, I was running in my high school uniform, and I was wearing shorts and a tank top. And my cousin, who had become indoctrinated into the very puritanical interpretation of Islam, said that I was haram, right? I was illegal according to the laws of Islam. And my parents taught me something amazing at that moment. They said, "We don't care." They did not become hostage to the shame that my cousin was trying to put on me. So I'm just giving that very innocent example because this concept of honor and shame, everybody in your audience knows it in some form or another. Some of my best research on this topic I did watching just ZTV soap operas, because, the Jaipur, this Sharam, all of these concepts are ones that we struggle with in our individual lives and in society. But how do they get weaponized? So, one of the fundamental philosophies that I know that you guys know and that your audience knows is that in Hindu philosophy, in all philosophies, there is this concept of transcendence, right? That we transcend our ego. What is shame? It's about our ego. We lose face, we look bad, we embarrass our family. Well, if you are beyond that shaming, you go to a higher place of existence. And I'm just speaking about this because that is the awakening that I think you're talking about, that we want in people, because it brings with it a courage. And how did I get my clarity? There we were in Karachi, Pakistan. It was January 23rd, 2002, and my dear, dear friend Danny Pearl went off for an interview. He was ensnared by this militant extremist that a lot of people will know, Omar Sheikh, who had already been arrested in Delhi in the 1990s and freed on the last day of the last month of the last year of the last century, December 31st, 1999.
Okay.
And Omar Sheikh did something in his plot to kidnap Danny. He tried to shame Danny. He tried to shame him first as an American, as a Jew, as an Israel, as the son of Israel. So what I learned in that moment of not only Danny's captivity, but the act that they did of beheading him and severing from him his head and his body parts was that Danny transcended. And that's where I know in our community, what did they do? They canceled Danny. They killed him. They annihilated him. And that is what they try to do to anybody who stands up against them. And that's the power of cancel culture. But the power that we each have is to be without shame when it comes to the values that we care about. And this honor brigade is honorless. They are people who try to defend the honor of Islam by shutting people up, by killing the cartoonists at Charlie Hebdo, by slaying anybody or shutting people up who dare to challenge their worldview. And so I heard in your last programs that you asked this question of why more people don't wake up. And I do believe, especially in our culture, that one of the fundamental weapons used against people is this idea of shame. And I just encourage everyone to live their values without any apologies and be unapologetic. And that's what we learned as the strongest way to stand up to the woke army.
If I might just add to this, you mentioned the cancel culture. No, the cancel culture appears to be becoming the biggest weapon of this woke army.
Yeah,
And in the name of freedom of speech, they are actually shutting off freedom of speech.
right. But I learned this one time. A friend of mine, was talking to me badly, and my friend, I said, "Oh, he's putting me down." And my friend said to me, "No, you are letting him put you down." So that is where we have choice. We have individual choice and free will to not be canceled, even if people try to cancel you. We can make our own destiny. I think that's such an important part of the philosophy that we know in India also, that it is our destiny to create. And that is the power that I want to just encourage everyone to take back. I know that it's awful. Like if you lose friends, you don't get invited to the potluck dinner party at Diwali, or your child doesn't get, a college recommendation. I know these things can be very painful, but I want to just tell you that the greatest inspiration for me has been my own parents. When I stood up as a Muslim woman at my mosque in Morgantown, West Virginia, just for the simple right of a woman to walk through the front door, my father was kicked off the board. He was a founding member of the board. He lost his power, his status. My mother, they stopped inviting her to the potluck dinners. And my mom said to me, "I don't want to go to their potluck dinners then. They don't have the values that I live by." And that's what I want to just encourage people to also think about.
Mm,
It's a
quite
terrific
right.
example of how you call them out. I read about you that you fought for your right, as you said very eloquently, walking through the front door and claiming my right to pray in the mosque. That's where your journey perhaps began in more ways than one, and you have done many, many battles. I wanted to ask you, one of the questions is that, which Sanjay ji was talking about, the cancel culture. How is it that the entire West is bending backwards to accommodate a thought process that is so inimical to the very existence that we want to practice.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your discussion that you had on Jaipur Dialogues on this issue, how it is that the elite that you talked about is most, powerful in this kind of sabotage, really, of their own values. And what I was able to dissect, this has been 20 years of reporting, 20 years of understanding how do universities like Brandeis University, um, how do they fall to this mob, this mob mentality? How do big corporations like, Levi Brothers and all these other entities, how do they just like you have discussed, how do they act in contradiction to the values that they profess? It's intimidation. Like it's just extortion. I've seen it again and again. There's like playbook that organizations like the Council on American Islamic Relations have put in place in the United States, and it's just a classic case of extortion. I covered corporate America for 15 years at the Wall Street Journal. That was my beat. I covered the airline industry, the travel industry, covered the regulatory side of it, international trade. I look at everything from the lens of a business. And what happens is that this big business of creating cancel culture, what they do is they hire lawyers, they get media people like public relations folks to pitch stories, and they sell their narrative, and they bully and intimidate folks. So what you end up doing is you end up getting fabricated stories, you get hoaxes, you get exaggerated truths. And the reporters themselves have failed in many instances to actually challenge this intimidation. And I'll just give one example. A teacher here in Fairfax County, Virginia, was speaking with some students, and the young girl had on her hoodie. And so the teacher was following the policy of no hoodies in the classroom and asked the girl to put down her hoodie. Well, she didn't. So he literally just put his little finger and brought it down. And then her headscarf slipped. And she alleged that he had yanked her headscarf off. The Council on American Islamic Relations held a press conference, and their extortion racket began. The teacher was suspended. He finally got his job back because guess what? Another Muslim girl in the class spoke up for him and said, there is nothing malicious in this. There is nothing intentional. And the teacher got the job back. So that girl actually captures exactly what I'm talking about. She could have had the peer pressure to go along with this little scam that was happening, but she didn't. And that's what we all have to do, is just refuse that intimidation. But that's how it's happened in case after case. That's what I chronicle through the whole book, because as a reporter, I just wanted to figure out, like, what's the origin story on all of this intimidation that we now take for granted? And it's been 20 years, just like you said, of a long war, and people need to wake up to it. That's what I wanted to do in writing the book. I wanted to not have people suffer like my family and I have also suffered, but we have survived. And that's what I want people to know, that you can survive, and you will be all the better global citizens for it.
One of the things that they leverage is this oppressor oppressed paradigm,
Yeah.
which has been uh, beautifully exploited by the left over the years. In fact, it is quite an education as to how the communists were officially banned from the United States politics, but they brought in all of their agenda through various means. They brought in cultural Marxism, they brought in Gramsci, they brought in Derrida, they brought in the Frankfurt School, and slow poisoned the entire system into this oppressor oppressed binary.
Right.
And with that, they have created an alliance, as you say, with the Greens, the Islamists. And now they are the ones who get to decide who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed.
We
And then they float all kind of new ideas, things like ESG and other devices, and they completely suppress not just free speech, they're suppressing free movement, they're suppressing free business, almost everything. Whatever America is known for, the freedoms, those freedoms are being beautifully, I should say, or rather artfully suppressed by these people.
Yeah. No, it's dangerous, it's scary, but I just want to tell people that, I sit here in the United States. We are having this conversation because this is what it takes. Like, we have to expose their agenda, we have to expose their tactics and speak up and challenge it. That's what happened for me. Is I went from seeing the dangers of the Islamists to the summer of 2020 seeing how the alliance with the far left was now coming into the school system. And I think this is an area that all of your listeners and viewers should really care about, because this means that they're coming for your kid. They're coming for your grandkid. Any opportunities that you knew in the United States of America is being slowly erased, especially for people from the Indian diaspora. I have here a sign. This was a sign that we made because there was a joke at our school board about how a new admissions policy to the school that my son was attending, Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology, was now being changed. And the merit admissions was being removed. And the school board member, who is Muslim from this Islamist network, joked to another school board member, "Yes, it's anti-Asian, LOL," laughing out loud. So we made this sign that said, "Hate is not a laughing matter." And we're in Fairfax County, Virginia, and we call it Unfairfax, Virginia. We're challenging them on every part of the, absurdity of their arguments. And we're exposing the books. I have beside me, book after book after book of these, of the ways that these folks have entered into issues of sexuality, gender politics, race, merit, on and on and on. These books are part of that machine in order to try to undermine excellence. And that's where I want everybody to hear this warning very clearly, that starting here in Northern Virginia, the school board erased Asian students as minorities, as students of color, and we were called things like white adjacent. And that's the tactics of this woke army. Just like you said, though we have lived real white supremacy under British rule, we, through the success of our children and our families in the United States, had now become part of the oppressor class. And that is how they have been able to go after Hindus also in the United States and elsewhere. I just want everybody to understand that this strategy, this effect that you are seeing of the anti-Hindu sentiment, it is because they replaced the old hierarchy of human value with a new hierarchy of human value. And in it, the extremist Muslims are forcing their way to the top, and Hindus must come to the bottom because they are a challenge to them. And that is why you are seeing this attack, this character assassination that's happening now on people from India and Hindus in particular.
That was a very, very pertinent question Sanjay ji asked you. And first time I saw you on Fox, CNN, MSNBC on the same day, because you were talking about how your son, your only son, lost out on a scholarship because of the fake narrative of equity and equality in the classrooms. Please do share that, because this is a very important point, Because
Yeah,
lots of Indian people of Indian diaspora come to the United States for education.
right.
The whole lot of H-1B green card holders, their children are going to school.
Yeah.
What they must watch for. How
Yes.
can they support a massive thing that you are fighting on the K-12 system of schooling here?
Yeah.
Should, and I will throw in another question so that you can answer in continuity. A lot of Indian children come here for higher studies because
Yes.
the school admissions are tough and college admissions are tough in India. What they must watch for as
Yeah.
parents for their children.
Well, let me illustrate to you what happened is that in June 2020, as America is having its racial awakening, we get a letter from the principal at my son's high school. And our high school, this is such, I can't even begin to tell you how magical it was for me to walk into the hallways of the high school when my son first began. There was sugarcane juice at the parent teacher meeting. There was biryani, at the after school events. I saw people from North, South India. It was so lovely. I heard all the languages of India. We had Diwali, we had Lunar New Year because we have a lot of Chinese students also. Well, that's diversity. I counted some 30 students from some 30 countries have attended this high school in Northern Virginia. But guess what? The principal sent a letter to us and told us that we needed to check our privileges. So, privileges is code for you're the oppressor. And these parents, including me, I read it and shock because I know our family origins. I know the struggles that our families have had. Well, fast forward, they get rid of the merit admissions test, like I mentioned. And what has happened now? Just this winter, we learned that the school principal had been keeping from students notice that they had gotten this National Merit Commended Student Award until after early admissions had passed this past year. And in the years before, she never told our students. So, guess what? 2 years after my son graduated, I learned that my son was a National Merit Commended student. And just like you said, it cost us scholarship money, it cost him a good feeling, which is what also happens when you do well in this world, right? You have some sense of reward inside of your own being. Well, what is happening here? It's not just about one school. From California to New York City, there is a war on merit and the idea of the meritocracy. And just like you just said, the word that is being used to hijack meritocracy is this word called equity. And everybody needs to understand that equity is being used as an excuse for a new racism in the United States of America. We now have so many programs, so many admissions processes that judge kids now by their race. And in this new hierarchy of human value, kids of Asian origin are now put at the bottom with white kids because their success has made them, quote, privileged and the oppressor. And so we now have Asian kids excluded from college preparation programs here in Fairfax County, Virginia. I just broke that story a few weeks ago. They are excluded from internship programs. Admissions is also gotten much criticism and in college, including at Harvard University. And we're likely going to win an important case at the Supreme Court this spring that shows that Harvard University and University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, were racist to Asian students. And guess what? We, the parents, filed a lawsuit here in Northern Virginia with the organization called Pacific Legal Foundation, and we too won a lawsuit. A federal judge ruled that the new admissions policy discriminates against Asian students, that it targeted Asian students for to be reduced at the school, and the number it decreased from 70 some percent to 50 some percent in the admissions class. And we will probably take that case to the Supreme Court, and we will win. This case will be like the Brown versus Board of Education case in the 20th century. And I just want everyone to pay attention to this, because you may think that you're safe because you keep your head low and you don't make a fuss. But let me tell you something, they are coming for you. If you succeed in this country and you're a minority, you challenge their narrative that this is a nation of such racism that minorities cannot succeed. And so they are bringing the top down. And if you dare to succeed, they want to bring you down. And that is why they are going after so many successful people of Indian origin who are also Hindu in Silicon Valley and in big tech, because they contradict their narrative that America, is an inherently racist nation that in which minorities cannot succeed. But you have to join our efforts. Like, I just want to encourage everyone, whether you do it quietly or whether you go speak at your school board for 2 minutes or write a letter to the editor. Like, we need all of you to be awake. Just like you said earlier, we need you to be awake, because it's not just about your job, it's going to be about your kid's job in 20 years if you don't fight this racism today.
What about this gender obsession? They are not just coming for the kids as far as the education is concerned, they're also coming for the kids as far as their identity is concerned. And
Yeah,
I think, uh, yeah, so we find that they're trying to disrupt families completely.
I'm going to show you a couple of the books. And if people think that this is, just about adults and maybe high school kids, just look at this book. This is a book called Woke Baby. So this is their agenda. What is woke? Woke means it is that divisive ideology that is being used as a Trojan horse, is the term, in military operations, to bring in sectarianism. It is sectarianism. And I know my brethren and my sisters in India understand the dangers of sectarianism. That is what killed my friend Danny Pearl. That is what we all reject. That's why we are Indian, because we live together in harmony, and that's our philosophy. But woke baby, one example. And to your point that you just said about sexuality, gender, this is another book, Gay BCs. People know these kind of parents know this kind of heavy book. It's meant for the big little, hands of children in preschool, kindergarten. So so gay BCs, this is again for 4-year-olds. T is not for train anymore. T is for trans. And I want you to know, I'm a classic liberal. I have defended in India and around the world, all those that believe that they are non-binary, as the word is used. But this is a concept that should not be for children, little babies. Bye bye binary. The pronoun book. Are you
Oh
he,
my God.
she? Yeah. Yeah. I know. See these? And this is, look at the little books. He. They. I mean, it is a indoctrination, of children's minds beyond their age level. These are kids at this age reading these books who don't even know how to brush their teeth well sometimes or tie their shoelaces. But you get them young and then you indoctrinate. And that's why parents need to realize, if you have little babies, little ones, they're a target too. They're not safe either from this woke army. And the best thing you can do is, just like you said, be awake, open your eyes, and see all of this.
I remember the case of Vijay Lakshmi Vishwanathan. You remember Vibhuti Ji? She sent her
Yes.
children back to Chennai and
Uh-huh.
got them educated in a Gurukul. And now they are doing fantastically well in Ivy League classes in technology.
Yeah. That's what a lot of parents are doing. I went to public school. I went from being a 4-year-old girl who knew not a word of English in New Jersey to going to school in mostly white West Virginia, where my dad was a professor. I became a reporter for the Wall Street Journal at the age of 23. It's the American dream, right? It's the American story. And I believe in the school system here, but what has happened is a corruption. It's a corruption. And that's why so many parents are leaving the public school system. They're trying to find private school options, although some of them are also not good. But, if you thought that like you could just send your kid off on the school bus and they'd be fine, unfortunately, you got to start paying attention much more.
It's scary. It really scares me.
It's
And
it's it's very scary. Of course it is. It is. And that's why when I was going through this book of yours, there are things that we know theoretically by reading, but yours is such a hands-on experience of experiential thing that you have narrated it very well. And that brings me back the wokeism, the agenda. How deep is CAIR organized? It bothered me. It bothered me that how deep is the entire organized effort to take over, which Sanjay ji was talking about, that though communism was banned in America, but they went into the universities and they are now spreading all over, to the
Yeah.
extent that how President Obama was persuaded that using Islamic extremism was a dangerous thing, injurious to the health of Muslims or
Right.
Islam. That was very dangerous. And then the most famous, infamous, notorious guy, who I call the James Bond megalomaniac billionaire, George Soros, how he has infiltrated with such a octopus-like, method of spreading out. Share your experience and thoughts about it, because you and I are in the same WhatsApp group when somebody said that George Soros is fulfilling his American dream. Oh no, it was not.
Yeah, you stood up for me, challenging that idea, right? Because I
Thank
want
you.
I want people, like, whether it's in mess and that, thanks for bringing up that example, because whether it's in a message chat or whether it's in the New York Times pages, we have to speak up. And I wanted to correct that idea. But thank you also for your kind words. Like, I really wanted to show people what I had seen and not just talk philosophically about this network. So, just really short, what happened for me is that all my life, like a lot of people from India, I have voted as a Democrat. I voted for Bill Clinton. I did not vote for Ronald Reagan. There's all of these big divides. Well, my shock came when President Obama, whom I voted for 2 times, started, undermining the language that we needed in order to take on Islamic extremism. And I learned then that this organization that you just referenced, Council on American Islamic Relations, called CAIR, had embedded itself through grants by the Open Society Foundation, and other Muslim organizations had also embedded themselves in the Obama administration. And what I chronicle in the book then, my dad came in the 60s, remember? So his contemporaries, they made their roots, a lot of them here in Northern Virginia, where I live. They established a hub in this place in Herndon on a street called Grove Street at an address 500 Grove Street, built an alphabet soup of organizations, including this one called CAIR, CAIR. And that network of organizations used the idea of race in order to guilt the Democrats into pulling back then on their criticism of Islamic extremism. And of course, they had governments pushing this also, like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and then Turkey, and then this entire mini UN of Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. 2005, they start pushing this message that it's Islamophobic to say anything against Islamic extremism. And that embeds itself in the Obama administration. And they get more and more power because they get grants from the Open Society Foundation. And then by the time Donald Trump is elected, they are so strong that they end up being part of the so-called resistance to Donald Trump. And you remember when Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi were in Texas, they were fighting against both of them because now they had another enemy, and that was Prime Minister Modi. And so their hate that they had had for decades against the nation of Israel, they then turned to India. India became the new Israel. And through the late 2010s, like 2018, 2019, they started these campaigns that you now see everywhere about India as a terrorist nation. You know, they just put out a report, I'm sure you guys saw it last week, called the Nazification of India. You know, they don't have a creative bone in their bodies, so they just steal the tactics of others in order to then demonize. And now what we see is people like Ilhan Omar today introducing a resolution about Islamophobia when she is one of the most hateful people that exists in the US Congress. We have a woman like Linda Sarsour, who emerged as a leader in the Women's March, excluding the Jewish Israeli feminists, you know, from this intersectionality that they were creating. Because just like you said, they got to now be the deciders, who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed. And in this new hierarchy of human value, like I said, people from India and Hindus in particular are an inconvenient minority to their narrative. They need to diminish them. And I want to tell you something. The kids at Thomas Jefferson High School, my son's classmates, many of them are not only from India, but many of them are Hindu. And I know in my heart that the administration that was pushing this war on the school and war on merit were driven in part by this dynamic that we were talking about before of trying to suppress now the success of Hindu kids and kids from India. And so it is very diabolical, and from politics to the local schools, it is expressing itself.
Is there a legal solution? We have in the United States a Republican Supreme Court, and
Well, we
is going to remain Republican for a long time.
have. Yeah, and they're going to try to challenge that because they know that they have a losing votes. But exactly, we're going to win this case that is Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard University because of this Republican majority. The organization that I helped co-found, called Coalition for TJ, versus the Unfairfax County School Board, we're going to win in the Supreme Court because of that majority. This is even I didn't appreciate the US Constitution, but I want to encourage everyone to get that little book and read it and know this one amendment, the 14th Amendment. It is equal protection under the law. This is the amendment. This idea of equality is what we must fight for. Equity is about inequality. Equity is about racism. Equity is about sectarianism, separation, segregation. It is a buzzword now used to bring in, just like you said, ideas of cultural Marxism. And so I call myself a civil rights activist now. I call myself a civil rights leader because we are fighting for civil rights. And for my, Hindu community, also, I want to say that we have to win on these issues of discrimination and equality. That is why these opponents are bringing new laws about casteism and other new divides, to isolate people even further. They're trying to use the law in order to evade equality for all people, and have an opportunity to now target, in this case, the Hindu community. And we just have to fight back. And I know, I know how important it is, because our parents and a mother from India named Suparna Datta, our parents helped elect the governor of Virginia, and we have to win elections, because it's his attorney general, who we also elected, who's doing an investigation into the discrimination of holding back those national merit awards, of the admissions process. Because when we elect people into office who share our values, we then see policies and court cases. Also, we win court cases that are in sync with our values. And that's just really important to actualize in our nation, but also is, please don't underestimate winning the school board races, winning the state races. It's a really vital to fighting for the values that you believe in this country, the values that you came here to really enjoy, both for yourself and your family. And I hope all our family in India will also support us in this effort.
Oh, certainly, we in the we in India, of course, are very, very upbeat about it, because we also see that the kind of copycat culture we have had for a long time. Of course, it's hopefully it's changing, or rather, we can see it changing. But then a lot of things get imported from the US. Our justices are importing concepts left, right, and center from the United States.
Yeah.
And of course, I have to ask a question to Vibhuti Ji here. In all this, do you see the Indian community moving to the Republicans?
Uh, there is
Because
an
they also
Asra.
have their own problems with
I'll
the
tell you. I'll tell you. I think
conservative church and things.
no. I tell you what Asra was telling earlier on, that just as typical Indians diaspora person, she was voting Democrat. But deep down in her inside, you can see that she's against woke and everything the Democratic Party is today running for or trying to impose on us. So there, when your values clash with the political agenda,
I
that's
think
the time when you awaken.
family is very precious
Very
for
for the
Indians.
entire Indian subcontinent, entire Indian diaspora, the family is the key. As once one senator told me, that we love you Indians as immigrants to this community, to this country. You know, you are professionals, you are hardworking, you are in the highest median income, you are not a law and order problem, you have family values, you take care of your children, you ask for nothing. So we are a very liked group of people. But the question is, as Asra said, and I think that she drove home a point very, very important, that, and I have been saying this on this show and many other shows, imploring upon Indian parents, get engaged in your local communities, get engaged in PTA, get engaged in the school education board, because you do not know what's happening there. So now, it is important, but parents are now realizing. But to the benefit of all the first generation Indians here who came here, they came with $6 in their pocket and they made their lives. They worked hard. They literally, to use the American slang, they slogged their butt out to be where they are. So for some time, as a classic Desi, we always, oh, he's become an American. He speaks English very well. So we always liked our children becoming like something else. Now, when the values are being threatened, for example, there were Muslim guys in Long Island who told me they were very annoyed with Democratic Party for bringing this transgenderism in the classroom and the sex change and all that. They were very upset with that, but they
Right.
did nothing about it. That's
Oh,
the point which I'm trying. So you are right, Sanjay ji, that the drift and the shift towards What is happening in the country today is definitely moving to the right. People are not happy about it. But what is happening to the already woke children, we do not know. I do not know, at least. At least my son is not woke. I know that.
I also heard, I don't know, I just read somewhere and also heard from some people that Hispanics, who were supposed to be the backbone of the Democrats, they're also very upset about the
Yes,
family values getting attacked by the
correct,
Democrats.
correct. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a real wedge issue, as they call it in politics, because just I don't know if everybody who's watching knows about this example, but it is true that unfortunately in the United States now, there are laws and rules and policies being put in place both by the school boards, the schools, health companies, and insurance companies that are now saying that when a child is 12, maybe 13, they can make their own decisions about what their name is going to be, what pronoun they are going to use, and perhaps even what health decisions they are going to make to change their gender or their sexuality. And so I think everybody can be in agreement, around the globe that parents need to be respected as parents. And these activists are now trying to act as parents to our children. I think everybody should be in agreement that there's a time and place for all these conversations. Parents have to be included in them. Absolutely, before a child is 18 as a norm in society, and this seizing of children's innocence is intentional and malicious in some instances, while hidden as benevolent. Oh, we're trying to just let children feel safe, um, but ultimately they vilify parents, and that's everybody knows this. Like, that's what's so crazy. How did we get to this upside down
Look,
world that all of a
looks
sudden
like
parents
a
are bad
medical
guys?
lobby scandal.
Yeah, exactly. It is. And we have so many from our diaspora who are in the medical lobby, so this is again very close to home for them, or in the medical industry, I should say, but because it's causing conflict too for professionals, and we're going to need people in the trade associations, in their hospitals, in their workplaces, trying to speak some common sense to these issues. But ultimately, we're going to have to win lawsuits. Just like you said, I didn't know about this term, lawfare, they call it, when you fight in the courts. But now I get it. Now I understand it. And I think at the young age of 57, I'm looking at going to law school. So yes, my
It's rather early, I guess.
Yes. My dada in Hyderabad was a lawyer for the freedom fighters. My nana was a lawyer. And so I feel like I have, finally realized, in a
No,
new
no,
insight
no.
for myself. Yeah.
You to fight another battle for freedom.
Yeah. I just could watch RRR a million times, because we are fighters, and sometimes because of shame or because of collectivism, we think we're not, but we are fighters. We're fighters for freedom and truth, and just using that film as an example of how we get erased if we don't pay attention. I think you might know that we had no dancers on the Oscar stage of Indian descent doing the dance from the movie that came from India. Like, that's how we get erased when we don't speak up and stand up for our rights to
absolutely.
voice.
I have one last question from my side, and
Yes,
that's where
after that, we go to the audience questions.
yes,
Right.
Right.
last inquiry with you
And,
is
and, and
about
just my formal
okay.
request to the viewers, please do share this video. Please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel and please support the channel. And also, any more questions, let them come.
And don't forget to subscribe to Jaipur Dialogue USA as well.
As well, of course. And one more, the Amazon link to the book
Yes.
that that is the foundation of today's discussion. That is there in the description. This
Thank
woke
you.
army.
That's right. So for me, there was a one last inquiry with you to hear your thoughts. How are you, Ayan Ali Hirsi? I admire people who have been able to stand up against injustice or wrong. Why is America so enamored by Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, and they shun people like you and Ayan who are telling the truth?
Yeah.
This is what bothers me a lot, that you and I get individually targeted
Yeah.
by their agents.
Right.
We live in hiding. They enjoy the freedom of expression. Share your
Yeah.
thought on that. How do you cope up with that?
Yeah, one of my themes of the book is about how I went from being the hunted to becoming the hunter and learning tactics for exposing the identities of many of these people who come after us as anonymous character assassins. Well, I use the example of Ayan. She was about to get an award at Brandeis University, and it was a Council on American Islamic Relations affiliate that launched a change.org petition, something just as simple as that, to ban her from speaking at the school and uh, to refuse to give the honorary award. And who was one of the culprits in this? None other than this professor of Islam that I knew very well at Brandeis University, a man by the name of Professor Lombard. And why did I know him? Because he had come after me. He had called me a prostitute, and he thought he was really funny and clever, trying to shame me as a woman, just like is a tactic always. And that's how they got Ayan canceled at Brandeis University. What's happening? I mean, these institutions, they are being duped. They are being duped into believing that these Islamists are the face of diversity, are the face of minorities. And that's where I know it's not in the DNA of a lot of people to say, I am here and I want my voice to be heard and I have a story to be told, but do it. Do it. Honor your ancestors, honor your ancestral history. For today's show, I'm wearing a pink kurta, a kurta that my uncle, my mamu, built an empire, a little empire, export empire of in the 1970s and 80s, when India had very few imports coming into the United States. And where did we sell these? My mom and I and my dad and brother at the flea market in New Jersey, because exactly like you said, we just came with dollars in our pocket and we would sell these cotton kurtas with hand embroidery from the women in Lucknow. And I wear it because this is part of my story. This is part of my ancestry. My family, 14 generations ago, I know the story because it was documented in our family stories, was Hindu, and two brothers converted to Islam. So I embrace that, and I make it a part of my own imprint in this world. And that's where I want to encourage everyone. Encourage it in your children also. Tell them your family stories. Tell them with honesty and also like pride. I know pride's a difficult word for us too. The challenges you faced. A lot of times when you live in a shame culture, you don't want to talk about the adversities you faced, but talk about it. Let them know you as human beings so that when they go out in the world, they can stand up for their own humanity, as so many people try to erase us. So it's when we know ourselves, which was part of my own journey, traveling through the temples um, and sacred places of India, that I learned, how critical it is that when we know ourselves, we can most transcend in this world.
So, with that, we go to the audience questions now. And the first question we go through is from Lucy King Sultan. Thanks.
You will hear Asra. You will hear some funny names
I
because
know
people
exactly.
operate in anonymity, and
Right, right.
right.
Thanks, Asraji, for visiting JD. Please come to us time to time. I always thought red and green are together against democracies.
Great. Absolutely. You're right. And I will come back again and again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Chaplacy King again. Asraji, there are some invisible hands who run the things by these reds and greens on ground. Wokeism, as you said, and atheism are B teams. Your view.
Yeah. They're B teams, he said.
Atheism.
Atheism is the B team to
Hmm.
wokeism.
Yeah. I'm not sure what that means exactly. Can you explain?
Well, I think we'll pass it, and if he comes with a better explanation,
Okay.
we will
All right.
give it back to you. Guru, next.
Guru Deshpande, thank you. Thank you, Guruji. And Jaipur Dal Abhinag. I heard that California is planning to introduce post birth abortion. Is it true? What the hell happened to California from Ronald Reagan to Newsom?
Mm. Yeah, I don't know about California, but I do know that that was even a topic of debate in Virginia, and
Yes.
former
What
governor.
is post birth abortion? Pardon my ignorance of
Yeah,
wokeism.
yeah. I mean, it's sounds like murder, right? It sounds like murder. Yeah. And I think that is for many people what it amounts to. It is used as an explanation to justify, you know, I don't know what nice word to use, but killing a baby after birth if you find a problem with the baby. But this is way beyond, way beyond the normal boundaries that most people in society had accepted for abortion. Even me as a liberal feminist, I always thought of it at that 3-month mark, right? And just like this pronoun books, you know, I was always supporting the hijras that were sometimes being mocked or ridiculed here and there when I would travel, and they just go too far and push the boundaries for people of what is common sense. And so this is one of these policies. And if you don't like it, like I said, please find out who's introducing this kind of legislation. Any legislation anywhere, pick up the phone, and you can use one of your fake names. You don't have to use your real name even in all of these instances. Just they need to hear from you. That's all.
Okay, next.
Comrade ex-leftist Harshad Mehta. Thank you, Arshad. Ashraji, coming from a Jai Bhim SC, so a scheduled caste community, I was left aghast when I learned that caste fluidity by the white wokes is a new thing in the USA. Shocking.
Fascinating. I hadn't heard about caste fluidity, but this issue of caste is one that has been weaponized as a way to obviously target a threat to the success of many of the Islamists, really, that are finding Indians and Hindus a threat in not only America and politics, but in business and technology. And I just want to say, just to that point, that I know for myself, I know, like I tried one time to arrange a marriage to a cousin of mine, and my aunt reprimanded me, and she said, "Oh no, we're from a sheikh family, the descendants of the Prophet Muhammad." Well, I didn't know that, and I didn't live that, but in her own way, she was expressing a caste system. And we know that this caste question is found in so many societies and so many cultures, but it is being used right now to define only Hindus in order to target Hindus. And so I want everybody to really take back that word also and not allow it to be weaponized against an entire religion.
And just to add to that, Asraji, you are absolutely right that they are looking at Hindu as a group, as a threat. Yeah. And in that, they have found that this group of the Dalit and others, they can be broken out of Hindus. And that's why this entire caste thing is becoming to divide Hindus into certain, one more time. That's what the whole agenda is. But they do not know, as you very rightly said, they are after you, regardless of whatever you might think. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a warning. Yeah.
Next.
Chadleo, 85. Thank you, Chadleo. I'm an Indian. My wife is Mexican, and she's way more extremely against the wokes. She would probably be violent in a school board meeting. Of course, he's a comment.
So,
well, then send the Durga.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
So, Chadleo, whatever you are, tell the Mexican to take the avatar of Kali and enter the school board. She will fix certain things. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to. Durga is my goddess, and I actually did. I learned to ride a motorcycle in India. I got a Hero Honda Splendor, in Lucknow, and I learned to ride it doing crazy eights around the cows that were on a cricket field, and I rode it all the way through the tantric peeths, that are some of the temples in Himachal, and I went all the way to Dharamsala, played volleyball with some Buddhist monks, and then tore my knee and had to come back in a car. But that was my adventure as a metaphorical Durga, and I absolutely agree. That's what we have to channel. Like, we have to channel that we are in a war, because we are. And I just want to show one example. A is for activist. This is another little book. And to that point about Mexico and Mexicans being aware, just like Cubans, Venezuelans, this is the example of what they have for Z. Z is for Zapatista. And many of you will not know this group, but it's a socialist, Marxist guerrilla organization in Mexico. So they are going after every identity group and every part of society in order to get at the kids. And so thank you for writing, and sick your wife on the school boards, please.
RP. Asra ma'am, don't you think wokeism is the natural outcome of liberalism, atheism, feminism? Lesson from BJP, RSS, who are pushing liberalism, feminism, hard to copy, Koras. Well, they're not really pushing. I think they simply have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
We should send this program to them, actually.
I don't know. To me, I to this day, I still self-identify as a classic liberal. I don't say liberal anymore because it's become so hijacked as a term. I used to use the word progressive for myself also, but to me, a classic liberal has also many of the same values as conservatives of free speech, individual rights, responsibility, liberty, freedom. And that's where I think, like, we also have to fight for the values we believe, just like the fight in India is for this democracy that we believe in. Like, we cannot allow them to basically do this just like what they're doing, this ugly makeover. I mean, India proved at the Oscars, like, nobody can beat India when it comes to public relations. And so stay true to that, keep that beautiful principles that we've got. But that's why I don't always reject the liberalism as a concept.
Next.
Gyan, that which is a global phenomenon should also be tackled globally. Pranam, he's making a statement, so thank you.
Yeah.
But the start has to be somewhere globally. That's what you have to remember. It has to start somewhere for it to become global, because everything starts from that particular moment, that particular place, before it gets global. So bear that in mind. Shiva Satya, Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall, exchanged their genders at a super mall. All woke doctors and all the woke men couldn't get Humpty's pronouns right again.
So great. I love it. Good
I
job.
love it.
That's a good one.
You
Shiva
win
That's a
the,
really
Satyaji,
good one.
you win the
that
poem
is
award.
so amazing. So please do post it. Again, we want to put it on the Jaipur Dialogue
I
announcement
think we'll pin
site.
it somewhere. Please write it down in the comments so that we
Yes,
can pin
please.
it
Yeah.
somewhere.
Janak Patel. Thank you, Janakji. Any org site you would suggest for young adults, Asra?
Yes. For org site, he means any websites?
Where the children can go and visit, because what you have shown here, the alphabet soup that they have created, the
Yeah.
alphabet descriptions, these are the books have been in the making.
Yeah.
So kids go to the website and they do the research. Is there any website that Janak can refer his children to go to see it for themselves?
Yeah, he said young adults, so I'm going to go. Did
Yeah.
he say young adults? So I'm
Yes.
going to go a little older, because these websites I know. So there's this author, mathematician named James Lindsay. He's got a website called New Discourses, and he challenges all of the ideological underpinnings of wokeism. He was my first phone call in the summer of 2020 when a parent from Harvard Law School told me that he had studied critical race theory under the father of it at Harvard Law, and that everything that we were seeing was this ideology of critical race theory. So James Lindsay was my first phone call. Then there's this former, she's a Muslim reformer still. Her name is Irshad Manji, and she started a program called the Moral Courage Project. And so she's actually teaching curriculum in schools. And so that's actually a good project for younger age also, so that you can also like read her stuff, and then you can have these conversations at home. You can have these beautiful conversations about critical thinking. And remember, your kids don't have to agree with you, right? Just have the conversations. That's what's so important. And learn from them what they are absorbing, because I'll tell you, the best whistleblowers are our kids. Yeah.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Next.
Shiva Satya once again. Gender dynamics are different across nations. Even if we are to indulge the white patriarchy notion, why must Indian cities involve in this charade?
Yeah, I think that what happens is that in a nation like India, that is not white, they create new white characters, white hierarchy. And that's what's happened in this caste debate. They are trying to divide people who are all minority, right? They're all people of color. But now, in order to continue that cultural Marxism and that new hierarchy of human value, they start participating in this, this stratification of people, and that's why I absolutely agree. Like, we should not participate. We should go towards a universal humanity that is the better value than all of this segregation and sectarianism.
Next. Muted. You're muted, sir. Hello.
Yeah, sorry. Asraji, can you speak on the improvement in the lives of Black communities, statistically speaking, post the push of woke agenda, was it at least helpful to them?
Oh, wow. Post the push. Yeah, it's such an interesting question. I mean, I will look at it through one lens, which I think is one of the most important. And, it's been 3 years of this experiment of our public school systems and the equity agenda. Well, reading, math scores are at their worst across the board and including among the Black and Hispanic communities that these equity agendas claim to help. You know, the way that they started coming after Asian and white kids is that there's something that they call the achievement gap. And so, what you see, unfortunately, in school systems across the country is that white and Asian kids are performing at higher levels in reading, math, SAT scores, and other honors. And then the Black and Hispanic kids are lower. And guess what? They haven't improved these kids' performances. So what are they doing now? This is where everybody has to pay attention. They're bringing the Asian white kids down because they can't bring the bottom up. And that's where they're failing the most vulnerable kids.
And that's a bad risk to high performing or ambitious children and parents.
Yeah.
That's something that requires, as you very rightly said, get engaged and involved in the school boards and all that. That's very important. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Okay, Poonam Abhiji, after a very, very long time. Where have you been, Poonamji?
Is post-birth abortion, does it have an age limit, or that will legitimize all murders like the beheadings ordered by the divine? And am I a Dalit if I'm the only meat eater in the vegetarian group?
Yeah, trying to think outside the box, right? This is somebody who would be very fun to have at a potluck dinner party, right?
That's right.
You're invited. You're invited.
Poonamji, you are invited. You are here wherever you are in the US. I know you are in the US. So you are invited for the potluck.
Yeah. We're gonna have a potluck of all the canceled kids, right?
Right. I think we have come to the end of the questions and answers. So we need to wind it up now. And with that, I would like to thank all our viewers. And most of all, I have to thank Asra Nomani ji for coming to grace the Jaipur Dialogues, and Vibhuti ji, of course. Thank you so much. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram.
Ashraji, thank you so much for joining us today. And as one of the guests said, visitor said, question said, you are coming again, and thank you for your consent already. I'm not going to ask again. So.
I will, absolutely. I enjoy this, and we're going to make it a delicious potluck dinner.
Delicious potluck dinner. And your book has significant amount of issues that we need to know.
Yes.
As a journalist, how did you venture out? How did you cultivate the daring to do what you are doing? So that's another chapter.
Yeah.
For the rest of the people who get frightened or get scared or get hesitant. So that is a very powerful message, and I
would love to talk about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It's our India that gives me courage. And so thank you, everybody. And be sure, because I know we have a lot of people that are from our Indian diaspora, be sure to go on Amazon and add your review, because my haters are trying to work the algorithm. So I know you guys I know you like competition, so I'm going to dare you to outnumber them. So please add your 5-star review. I say,
Absolutely,
might as well open a motel now, right? 5-star review. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.